All right. Welcome to MoLabs. This is our official webinar series where we educate our global creator community on everything AI. This is our second edition. This is where we talk about all of the many changing things around AI as it relates to creativity. More specifically, we also like to bring on teams to do demos to sort of arm our creative community with the best tips and tricks to inform and improve their creative process through their day-to-day. So today we have some really amazing special guests today. We have Runway. I'll let them speak to who they are and what they do. But you know, the way that we see it and the way that we understand it on their website is that they are a creative suite like no other. Basically, if you can imagine it, you can create it on Runway. So we'll learn a bit more about that today, and we're super excited. And I'll just introduce the team here at Mofilm. Myself, Tatiana Spiegel. I'm executive producer, and I run the North American production team. And we have Lee Margolis, our global creative director. He touches all business around the world. And then we have Anisha, our director of ops, who's going to be helping us facilitate some of the Q&A. A couple of housekeeping items that I just want to cover off on before we get started. We are recording this, so if you're uncomfortable with that for whatever reason, drop off and we can send you the video afterwards. And then we also are going to be doing a Q&A at the very end of this. So the last 10 minutes, we'll try and get to as many of your questions as possible. So just if it pops up in your mind, drop it in the chat and we'll try and get to it. So with that, I will pass it off to Will and Ian, who are our demo guest speakers today.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'll just quickly introduce myself and then pass it to Ian. I'm Will from the sales side of things. I can be your main point of contact too if you have additional questions after the call regarding Runway. But yeah, I'm just here to help you guys explore the platform, answer questions, and hopefully show you some really cool things that you can incorporate into your workflows. And with that, I'll kick it over to Ian.
Hello, my name is Ian. My official title is Staff Workflow Architect. I kind of exist between design and engineering, help build Runway. And so everything I'm going to show you today is very exciting. Just a little bit of background on me. I've been editing video professionally for about 20 years. Went to film school, moved out to LA, did everything from short films to feature films to cooking shows to YouTube stuff. And I've kind of been everywhere. And about a year ago, Runway approached me and they told me that AI was the future of video. And then they demoed a couple of things for me. And I dropped everything I was doing and quit my job and came running over here because it's truly pretty amazing. And so everything you see here today in the AI space, it's been amazing to see how the scene has been growing. And for what it's worth, Runway has been around since 2018. We are a full stack applied AI research company that kind of is focusing on image editing, image synthesis, video editing, and video synthesis. And we've been laying the groundwork for this huge boom in AI that you're seeing now since about 2018. And so we have a really amazing research team and engineering team, and they're able to do some of this foundational research. For example, one of our lead researchers came up with latent diffusion, which then snowballed into stable diffusion, which then exploded into pretty much every text-to-image model that you see out there today. And right around that time, we decided to set our sights on video because that's the most next logical step after images. And so the stuff I'm going to show you today, most of it, almost all of it is available. I'm going to show you some secret stuff that's not publicly available yet, but we'll get you excited on some of that stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. Share with sound just in case. All right. Can you guys see my screen? Everything good? Amazing. So this is Runway. We are a browser-based application. So you don't need to install anything on your computer. You don't need to have a really fancy GPU or CPU or tons of RAM. All of the computing happens in the cloud and you just log into a website. And that's the beauty of it. It's really, really awesome. So you can do the same level of AI creation and visual effects work on a 2016 Chromebook or a 2023 MacBook M2. Doesn't really matter. Obviously, the MacBook is a little bit, cooler, but you can still do all the same work nonetheless. So when you access Runway, essentially what you're going to be thrown into is a suite of magic tools. And so we have over 30 different tools that you can use to create all throughout the boundaries of video, images, audio, and like kind of everything in between. And I like to give the example of like in middle school, I remember they would put like 8 dots on the board and ask you how many possible combinations there were with the 8 dots. And everyone's like, oh, 16 or whatever. But they're like, no, it's 100 and whatever. and you don't understand how they got there. And it's because of like, you know, the different combinations of things, and it just like expands infinitely, right? And so if you do that same problem here with 30 magic tools, you really do have like almost unlimited possibilities for creating. And that's what we're building here. And so all of these magic tools can be accessed a la carte. If you go to the AI magic tools page, you can just get to any one of them individually, or you can use them in a couple different ways, right? So individually as existing tools, or you can go into our editor. So we have a fully functioning nonlinear editor built in the cloud. I have access to all of my assets that I have uploaded into Runway. I can add text, I can add shapes, I can come over here and I can scale and rotate and do all of the things that I would like to do with video, but I am doing it in the cloud in our editor, right? And I can do everything, including animation. We have full animation capabilities. This is our animation timeline. We have keyframe editors, easing, presets, everything that you would want to do like basic motion design and basic editing, all from within the Runway ecosystem. But what makes our platform special and different is this foundational layer of machine learning and AI that it kind of sits on top of. And we have small tools and we have huge tools, right? So one of the small tools that I love to demo is called beat snapping. And if you have a piece of audio on your timeline, you just click on this little beat snapping icon. And what it will do is it will put down snapping markers on your timeline, and it will automatically analyze the waveform of the track and then kind of give you snapping markers based on the BPM of your song. And so you don't really have to guess where the beats are when you're editing. You can just use that grid and then snap things to it, which is really, really handy. That's a small AI tool. A large AI tool would be something like our green screen tool. And some of you may have heard of Runway before, but we kind of got put on the map for this tool. And so this is called green screen. It is our single click rotoscope tool. And this is a clip that I would never voluntarily want to rotoscope, manually or otherwise. The camera's moving, he's moving, it's 20 seconds long. This would be an absolute nightmare to rotoscope, right? So we built a tool called Green Screen, which is just going to allow me to click just a few times here on my subject. It will automatically create a rotomask based on the depth map that gets created when you upload the footage in the first place. And then just using one single keyframe, it's going to create a rotomask throughout this entire clip, following my dancer, following the camera, and getting everything almost perfectly, which is pretty crazy. And so what I would do now as an editor is I would kind of like guide the machine learning process, and I would go and look for any time that the mask breaks. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to find one. Oh, there, I saw a hand sticking out, right? So I would come over here, maybe click on his hand, and you just kind of guide that mask throughout the duration of the clip, and it will add another keyframe down here at the bottom, and you just kind of guide it along the way. And so it's a little bit different than your traditional methods of rotoscoping, which is like traditionally frame by frame. You don't really have to do that because the machine learning is working in between all of the keyframes, and it's saving you a ton of time. And so from here, if I wanted to export this, I have a few different export options. I can come over here and feather the mask a little bit. If I wanted to just refine my selection, I can come right up here to export on a green, blue, magenta background, export just the alpha matte. So I can bring it into something like After Effects or Nuke or whatever you're using. Or I could just export the ProRes file or the PNG sequence with an alpha transparency layer, and then bring that into an existing workflow that I'm already using. If you're using Premiere or DaVinci Resolve or whatever, you can just go straight into those programs, or you can go back to the Runway timeline from the green screen tool. And this is just, it's...
Ian, I just want to jump in really quick.
Sure, yeah.
How much time do you think you're saving with using this green tool specifically? Because we get a lot of times where we have editors come back to us and say, rotoscoping will take 2 days or whatever have you. In your experience, how much time do you feel like this is saving in your process?
Hours, if not days. Yeah. I mean, there's other tools that exist, right, that we've tried to use before. Like the most logical next step from here, if you haven't heard of Runway, would be to use the RotoBrush 2 tool inside of After Effects. And even that, it doesn't work the way that you want it to. You still have to guide it frame by frame. You can't just let it run automatically. There's no like deep learning involved. And so there's still a lot of manual time involved in using a tool like that. This tool saves so much time because within literally 15 seconds, it gets you into the 95th percentile of it being exactly what you need. And we have people that are like more on the professional side that will do the first layer roto in Runway and then go over into some other tool so that they can do like really fine detail adjustments. If they need to use the refine edge brush for things like hair, they're just working on one very small part of the roto instead of the entire roto. And so you're still saving days of time doing it this way. And that's just with rotoscoping. We have 30 other things to show. Woo, let's go. But yeah, so if you wanted to pop back into Runway, I always like to show this just because it's fun. You're able to do really cool check my internet connection. How dare you? I am connected to the internet. It's raining right now outside in California, which is sheer disaster sometimes.
Perfect timing.
I know. So yeah, basically what I've been able to do is create this foreground and background separation between my subject and the background. So I could stick a text layer back there if I wanted to. I could duplicate my dancer here and just like move one of them off to the side. And you can start to do these really cool, like compositing tricks very, very quickly. And I'm going to remind you a few times on this demo that I am on the internet while simultaneously streaming to you on the internet. And so all this is happening in the cloud, which is really fun. But yeah, you combo some of the animation stuff with the green screen stuff, and you can start to get these really cool transitionary elements that you can literally do within seconds. And this would take you, you know, if you're really quick and you're really moving fast, like this would take you an hour, maybe an hour and a half in another tool where it takes you, you know, less than a minute or less than 2 minutes in Runway. So on top of that, we have another magic tool called inpainting. And this shot specifically is in this demo because I got this note from a client. They were like, hey, we really love this shot, but we cannot show the Adidas logo. What can you do, right? And so for me as an editor, do I replace the shot, which is going against the client notes? Don't really want to do that. Do I blur it? And it's like super obvious that I'm covering something up. That's ugly. I don't want to do that either. Do I painstakingly frame by frame mask in something like After Effects and then use content aware fill and just like hope that it works? No, I'm going to use inpainting from Runway. Whoa, we have a rogue brushstroke here. But basically what this is going to allow me to do is just quickly paint over this Adidas logo. And I'm going to show you guys the mask results first, and to show you that it's going to track that Adidas logo through my scene with just one keyframe. And so now if I switch this over to result mode and go to the front, it will fill that hole with content and context aware fill and bring back in some of that t-shirt material and just erase that logo like it was never there. And so this is just saving a ton of time. There's no manual work involved other than just painting out the logo in the first place. And like, that's something that people are used to doing anyway, right? The paintbrush tool, it's been in every creative tool since the dawn of time. And so this is not a new mechanic to do something. It's just automating the super tedious parts of that process along the way. And so this works for stuff like logo removal. You know, we've had clients that like need to remove graffiti from a wall or something else that like shouldn't be there, right? Like a random garbage can or a random car that's parked where it's not supposed to be. And so this is just a really easy way to come in here. I'll get rid of this bird so you can see it. And it's going to also like put the lines back in the wall where they're supposed to be. It just works really well for cleaning stuff up. Things left in the scene that weren't supposed to be. Let's say hypothetically, you're working on a huge multi-million-dollar show for HBO and you happen to leave a coffee cup sitting on the table. You could just inpaint that out and it would be like it was never there. And you don't have to spend human resources or capital to, you know, spend all the time to get rid of that. You can just paint it out, which is very fun. Amazing. Some of our other tools that we have within the editor, right? These are all accessible from within the video editor. Like I said, you can access all of our tools a la carte if you'd like, but these are all available to you in the editor. This is just a video of a skydiver, right? Nothing crazy going on here. It was shot on a GoPro at 30 frames per second. And what I was able to do is actually separate my layers. So the bottom layer here on my timeline is the inpainted layer, and the top layer is the green screen layer. And so now what I can do is just move my skydiver like wherever I want, right? If I wanted to make room on one side for text, if I wanted to scale him and do something else or like really scale him down or whatever, I now can like create this really interesting flexibility in my timeline because I've been able to inpaint out my skydiver from the scene, right? This just looks like a falling camera falling out of the sky. And now I have this separate layer for the green screen. And it just gives me this really interesting and unique flexibility that I wouldn't otherwise have. Or I would have it, it would just take me a tremendous amount of time to get there. And then we also have single click motion tracking tools. So I just clicked once on this guy's helmet and it allows me to put some text and just tag it to his helmet, which is really, really handy for motion tracking if you need it for things like lower thirds or, you know, baked in graphics or whatever. And the last tool that I want to show you is frame interpolation. And so for me as an editor, this tool is huge because there's a lot of times when you're editing, and depending on what you're doing and it's rhythmic and you need to like create more space, you need to be able to slow footage down, right? And sometimes you're given footage that's shot, for example, in 30 frames per second. And let's say I wanted to slow this down to 20% of its speed. In every other video editing application, this is what you're going to see. It's choppy. You can count the frames because there's no data. This was not shot in a high frame rate. And so for me to slow it down to 20% of its original speed, this is playing at the equivalent of like 3 or 4 frames a second. It just doesn't look good. So we have a magic tool here called super slow motion, which works based on frame interpolation. And so with AI assistance, it's going to go in and create frames in between all the frames and then blend all of those frames together. So I'm able to go from 30 FPS to about 240 FPS fluid slow motion, and it doesn't look choppy anymore. It just looks very, very smooth. So if I turn this off, choppy, turn it back on, looks real nice. And so even for those moments that you need to slow something down to like 90%, 80%, you don't have to worry about like frame blending or optical flow or whatever the other settings are, because those still don't work right. For me as an editor, my only other option besides this was to get a plugin like Twixtor, which is like $300 just to do one shot. Like this works better than Twixtor, and it comes included in this suite of AI tools. And so, yeah, this is a tool that I always love demonstrating because it's been super helpful for me specifically as an editor. And then on Monday of this week, we publicly released Gen 1, which is the first AI video model that's been released to the public for public use. And basically how Gen 1 works is that you feed it an input video and then you get an AI assisted video off the back of it. We call it video to video. And so for this example, this is the input that I gave it. And this is the output that I got out of it by just using a simple text prompt of a scuba diver underwater. And so this render I did in Blender in like 5 minutes. It's a pre-rigged model. I didn't do anything crazy. It's like 4 cylinders in the background and then a wall and 1 light, right? And then it gives me this off the back end. And so, yeah, this is the public release of Gen 1. I'm going to show you some examples here. I just did these right before the meeting started. It takes about 60 seconds for 5 seconds of video, which is pretty fast. But this is my input video here of this horse running. And so I fed it a couple different images. Image 1 that I fed it was a actual photograph of a gold horse statue. And so it's able to transfer that style onto the horse, which looks really awesome. This is a photo that I generated in Runway. I'm going to show you guys the image suite right after this. But my text prompt here was a horse made out of yarn. And so I'm able to generate an image of a horse made out of yarn and then transfer that style onto an existing video. And then this is another image that I did with image to image, which is getting like the structural integrity of that video a little bit closer to the original input. And so you can really start to get these incredible animations out of existing video. And we have all sorts of people that are using this tool for animations and for giving new life to old footage. Gen 1 is kind of like really taking off aggressively in the music video space. But I feel like this is going to be a really interesting mechanic to use AI assisted video once we get into the future. And so
how
Gen 1,
specific can you, I'm sorry, I'm
go
totally
ahead. No, please
jacking
lob questions at me.
Jumping
lob
into
questions.
some questions.
Please do.
But I'm just wondering like how specific you can get with the prompt engineering on this particular tool. Like, is there any limitations, or would you consider this similar to like let's say like a Midjourney where you can get as specific as you want? You can even talk about like what kind of like potential lens you would want this to look like.
That's a really good question. Runway, obviously, like we have a focus on video. We do have an image synthesis platform, which I'm going to show you next. But like, I think that we can all agree on the call that Midjourney is like, their stuff just looks really, really good, right? And so as far as prompt engineering goes with Gen 1, the beauty about Gen 1 is that you can use this application with any other AI generation platform. If you wanted to generate an image in Midjourney, bring it into Runway and then use Gen 1, we have a lot of people doing that. You can take a photo on your cell phone and bring it in. It doesn't even have to be AI generated. And so when it comes to prompt engineering or just engineering the output in general, it's really up to you, and there are no limitations. Like for us, the settings that we give you here are pretty simple to understand. Structural consistency. If this is down at 0, it's going to adapt the input video as close as it possibly can. And then if you go all the way up to 7, essentially what it's going to do is it's going to blur the input video and then make all the pixels like kind of flat. And so it gives you this really completely different look and feel that's going to be structurally different than the original input video. And then from here, you can use your style weight. So like, is it going to be more or less like the prompt that I'm providing it? You can provide an image asset. We have a bunch of presets that you can use, or a text prompt. And so you can do 3 different prompting methods with this method. And so going back to the example that I gave you before of like how many possible combinations, it kind of is like, I can't even give you an answer because something that I'm going to say, like, you're going to think of something completely different, which I think is the cool, unique part of Gen 1 is that it's just like works so different depending on where your brain is at the time. So yeah, it works with everything. You can use Runway images, Dolly images, Midjourney images, doesn't matter. And it will still work the same. And then the unreleased thing, while we're still talking about AI video, is Gen 2. And so Gen 2 is our first text to video model. So no input needed other than a text prompt, which is pretty wild, to be honest. You can use Gen 1 or Gen 2 in a couple different ways. You can provide just a text prompt. You can provide just an image and it will animate that image, or you can provide a combination of an image and a text prompt, right? So text to video, the prompt here of the late afternoon sun peeking through the window of a New York City loft. That's the only input that it was given to create this video. Text plus image to video is what we like to call character mode. And essentially, this is Eugene. We generated him in one of the Runway models that's going to be released soon. And Eugene is AI generated. And so we provided Gen 2 an image of Eugene along with a text prompt of a low angle shot of a man walking down the street, illuminated by the neon signs of the bars around him. And now all of a sudden we're able to bring Eugene to life and put him into these scenarios. And so you can start to get these really directed shots that are completely AI generated, where you can get the same character kind of appearing in all of the same shots. And then image to video, which is just you give it an image and nothing else, and then it will kind of like give you a generated interpretation of it. And so right now we have Gen 2 working in our Runway Slack. I'm sorry, this is not going to be sexy, but it's just going to be more mechanical here. But yeah, these are some generations that I did yesterday. So let's check it out. A beautiful waterfall in a jungle setting. That was the text prompt that I gave it. And then this is the output that I get out of it. Kind of hard to see. I apologize. But going in and out of full screen on Slack is like not the best. But that's a beautiful, waterfall in a jungle setting. Here's ocean waves crashing. Looks amazing. A beautiful golf course at the base of a California mountain. I got this nice little aerial shot of a golf course in California. And so when you start to think about the applications of this, Gen 2 is, I think, like a week old at this point publicly. And so we're in version -1 of this right now. And so if you imagine Midjourney's at version 5, once we get to version 5 of this, it's going to be really spectacular. And we're really, really excited about it. And so these models, Gen 1 and Gen 2 specifically, we're making improvements to those models every single day. We are really taking in a lot of user feedback and testing for this stuff because we believe that this is going to be the future of AI video for sure. And with that, that concludes our video portion of the demo. Does anybody have any questions? Do we want to pause for a brief Q&A on the video stuff before we jump into images?
We have 2 questions in the chat here. One specifically about your internet speed and how much time does it take to upload footage to the cloud server, considering the data of high-res shots from a Blackmagic or a ARRI RAW?
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't support Blackmagic RAW or RE Cinema RAW within Runway. What we would recommend you do is work in your traditional workflow settings. And if you have a specific shot that you would want to use Runway for, just export that as like a ProRes file. You can bring it in. We can support 4K. If you guys go with the enterprise route, we can support 6K, 8K if it's necessary. But we have a lot of people that are just using Runway essentially like you would use a plugin. And so you just export real quick, set your in and outs, grab just the image that you're using, like as more of a finishing pass. If you know you're going to use Runway, very similar to color grading, where it's like, hey, let's picture lock this thing before we go into the Runway phase. That's how we have a lot of professional outfits using us at this point. And so, yeah, it's I would recommend just using a ProRes file. You can kick out the alpha matte, and then you can reconnect the Blackmagic RAW or the RE Cinema files on the back end. And you're essentially just using the matte to use the original RAW footage, if that makes sense.
Ian, there was another question as well, just about clearance, which I think has been a pretty hot topic in AI. So the question was, are there usage restrictions for the AI generated videos?
I mean, we have pretty aggressive content moderation filters in place here. So like nothing, not safe for work, no violence, no anything like that. But you know, from the boundaries of the internet, I mean, all the legality of this whole thing is still being debated. And I know that there's some like current lawsuits floating around and everything. Runway specifically, we use vetted open source data sets. We care very much about security. Everything within Runway is SOC 2 compliant. We have post houses that are working on like Netflix, Marvel, Disney stuff that need that level of security, and like they're using us and stuff. So, I mean, I think it just really falls on where your creative morality lies with this new emerging technology. This is something that's never been done before. This is something that's never been built before. And so there's a lot of questions obviously around that. But, you know, for us at Runway, like I said, we're an applied AI research company. We care very much about the research and how this technology comes to market in the first place. And so I'm biased. Obviously I work here, but like, if you're going to put your trust and ability in any company, I would say Runway is a very, very safe bet for that. And then there was a question about internet speed.
Yes. What is your
Correct.
internet speed that you're working on right now?
Mine's not that crazy. I think I'm hardlined in. I think my download is like 500 megs and my upload's like 20, which is like not anything crazy. There's better internet than mine. But the way it works when you upload videos and you're working in the timeline environment, essentially while you're uploading the video, it simultaneously is creating a proxy file, a low res proxy file, so that once it's uploaded, you can drag it and drop it onto the timeline and be working with little to no latency, because you're essentially working with like a 360p or a 540p file. But then once you go to export, it reconnects all the data in the back end so that your export ends up being high quality. So you're working with a lower res at the time so that it feels seamless, but then you're still able to extract the quality that you need to off the backside.
Ian, back to the question about ownership, because like that character that you showed there, let's say I made that and then turned it into a 30-second commercial for one of our clients and ran it on broadcast.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, totally. Everything is commercially licensable and royalty free through Runway, as outlined by our terms and conditions. I'm not going to read them for you on this call. That would be very boring, but if you wanted to dig a little bit deeper, you can look into that as well. Surprise, this meeting is just going to be me reading terms and conditions. But yeah, that's totally acceptable.
Okay.
That's really great news, because a lot of other tools, it's not the case for a lot of them that are out there. So yeah, music to our ears.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Let's move on to the image stuff real quick, and then we can try to save a little bit more time off the back end. So this is I'm going to run you through the Runway image architecture. And so we have ways to not only generate the images, but edit the images, augment the image, give variations of the images, expand the images in various ways. And so you mentioned Midjourney a little bit before, which yes, their output looks amazing, but you can't do anything else. You can't edit, you can't do, or like the other functions of Midjourney and even DALL-E and these other things are like fairly limited to what you can do. So like, yes, you can generate, but what if you wanted to edit? What if you wanted to add something? It like becomes a little bit harder of a process, right? And also, I love showing people this because the inference time in Runway is so ridiculously fast. And I did a side-by-side of Runway compared to DALL-E and Midjourney and Lexica and all the other ones. And let's say a bowl of fruit. I'm going to count on the call. Hopefully this doesn't fail me. 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds to get 4 images, right? It's wild. It works really, really quick. Midjourney, DALL-E, you're waiting upwards of 35 to 45 seconds on average, if not longer for some of this stuff. And yeah, Runway, the inference time works really, really quickly. And the inference time works quickly across all of our magic tools, right? And so for this one, I typed in a beautiful vase of flowers on a wood surface, modern, clean, beautiful shot on 35 millimeter. And I just spam clicked generate, and it just was able to generate all of these images very, very quickly. And so getting just the mess of brainstorm like out into the computer becomes a really, really fast process with Runway, which I really like as a creative, because one of the things that I felt has always held me back is the amount of time it takes to get my ideas into the computer and all the roadblocks that you have to jump over along the way. And those roadblocks can also include distractions. A coworker comes in, something happens, you get a pop-up, an email, a Slack notification. And with such low inference time, the amount of distractions gets drastically minimized. So you can just create and just do really fun stuff, right? So this is text to image. Cool. Amazing. Generated a bunch of images of flowers. I'm going to go now into our infinite image tool, which is our outpainting tool. So if you've used something similar, it works really, really well.
Let's say before you move on, just a quick thought on this. So you're using a laptop, your computer. I mean, I tend to use Midjourney a lot on my phone. Is that a nice one-to-one, or it's really user experience is better over here on the computer on your laptop?
That's a great question. We are actively in development right now on an iOS app. And so very soon you're going to start to be able to use some of the Runway tools from mobile. You can do some stuff from mobile right now, but it's like fairly limited. So we're actually designing an actual application to be able to use Runway. But yeah, I mean, we're a desktop cloud-based application at its core, but we understand that with the rise of Midjourney and all this stuff, that being able to do stuff on your phone is really convenient. We actually launched Gen 1 in a closed beta on Discord, and so everyone was using it on Discord, and we saw a lot of success there. So yeah, the next version of everything I show you now within Runway is going to be available via mobile pretty soon. And it'll all connect, right? So you can do stuff from your phone, and then once you're back at your computer, you'll have all your assets there. It'll be a really nice workflow. Yeah, real quick, outpainting, we call it infinite image, which is the tool that you're going to be able to use to expand your canvas in infinite ways. Again, it gives you 4 images very, very quickly. It seamlessly stitches that line together so that you can just keep creating and keep doing things, which is really, really fun. Let's say like a cup of coffee. And again, same inference time, within about 4 to 5 seconds, you have 4 different images that you can choose from, which is really, really awesome and really, really fast. And so that you can start using infinite image, which is outpainting, super fun. We have another tool called expand image, which essentially will do this automatically. And so I'm going to set this at 50% scale. Let's do 75% scale. And I want to make this in 16:9. My original image here is in 1:1, but I want to make it a 16:9 image. And so what this is going to do is shrink it by 25% and then give me a full frame 16:9 image. And it's just going to do it automatically with no prompting whatsoever. So if you do have an image that you're putting into a video, if somebody sends you a vertical 9:16 image or a square image, and you want it to be full frame in your video, and you don't want to do the duplicate, scale the bottom layer, blur it, lower the opacity, which takes a lot of time and it's kind of annoying. You can just go full frame on this stuff. And you can also prompt engineer what's happening around it as well. This prompt is created automatically. We have an AI model that will actually look at your image and then just guess what it is. And so you could change this as well. So you could start adding stuff in on the outsides. We have a tool called Erase and Replace, which does exactly what you think it does. You can come in here and you can erase certain elements of your image that you've generated. And I can say, a wine bottle, right? And it's only going to look at those brush strokes, and it's going to look at everything else around it, content, context aware. And it's going to give me 4 different wine bottle examples that I can now put into my scene. So I can start to edit these images. And this will work with actual photographs. This will work with your Midjourney and DALL-E outputs that you can then bring into Runway and edit them if you want. And you're not confined to the frame, which you can edit an infinite image. There is a little eraser tool here, but in other applications that aren't Runway, you run into this issue where, like, what if I wanted to span the edges of this, right? And now you're like, okay, well, now I have to like edit this part and then edit this part or whatever, and you have to use this frame. So erase and replace is just a way that you can kind of like remove the boundaries of that outpainting frame. And you can kind of be a little bit more flexible. We have another tool, image to image, which takes your input image and then it blends it with an output, right? And so you have another prompt here with your input image. And so for me, this was beautiful spring flowers painted by Banksy. And then it gives me a bunch of images that are based on the structure of my input image, depending on like where this strength slider lies. If I go to somewhere like 50%, I'll generate it. I'll show you the top. 50% is going to pretty much just be like the exact input image, right? Like I can see the structure of the input image. That's the input. This is the output, where you're starting to get like the graffiti look in some of the stems and stuff, but it's like, you know, it still very much looks like my input image, but the further away that you go, the further away you get from that input image and more like your prompt. So this is just a really, really fun way to brainstorm what something would look like in a completely different setting, in a completely different style. If you're reusing assets from something and it's like, oh, let's do this like Victorian Renaissance art style. Cool. Turn all the advanced options to like oil painting, matte painting, throw in some prompts in there. And now all of a sudden you're just getting these entirely new ideas that are all stemming from like the original thing that you gave it. So image to image to me is a really, really fun tool. Not nearly something that people use enough. And I would urge everyone on this call to use image to image because it really does help just transport you creatively to a brand new space.
And Ian, that kind of applies to if I wanted this to look like from a Wes Anderson movie or in the Star Wars galaxy or whatever, like that would also turn it that way, right?
Yeah. Let's see. Wes Anderson film. Let's see. Style. We won't change. So we have a bunch of advanced options that you can use as well, right? Like, so style, medium, and mood. Let's go mood cinematic, I guess, because that would be maybe one of the most relevant things here. Yeah, let's generate that. Let's see. Where are we at on the strength slider here? Oh, we're only at 50%. Let's go to like 80. Basically just color graded it like a Wes Anderson film.
Yeah, lots of yellow tones.
Yeah, yellow
Yeah.
tones. Interesting. Oh, there we go. Yeah, now we're starting to get there. But yeah, I mean, playing with the different prompt weights too, right? So if you have a higher prompt weight here, it'll take this into consideration a little bit more. Playing with the strength sliders, all of that stuff. Yeah, it's kind of like, depending on what you're doing, it's a little bit of a guessing game, but because the inference time in Runway works so fast, doing stuff like this and playing the guessing game doesn't, like, you're not sitting there for hours, like hitting generate, checking an email, hitting generate, going to get water, which is like, I think what a lot of people are used to right now. It's just like, you can sit here and just create, which is very, very fun.
Can you mix the media? So like if I'm working in this image tool and then also want to implement it into my film tool, like, do I have to download locally and then kind of work that way, or can it all mix?
So yeah, up here, if you hover over anything, you can save it to your assets folder, which then will show up on your timeline and in any of the video tools. So if I were to save this photo to my assets, right down here, there's a little dialogue here, exporting to your assets. Amazing. If I go now back to Gen 1 and I just refresh the page, let's throw this car in there. Nice Porsche. Where is that image? 1 second. There we go. So now I can use that image here. If you have a bunch of tabs open like I do, you have to just refresh the page. But if you're working within the same tab, yeah, it'll just show up in your assets folder. And then we can say, we'll come back to this at the end of the call. Let's do a structural consistency of 3, and we'll do 10 on that scale. Click generate. And now we're going to generate this Porsche with flowers in a Wes Anderson film style. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Yeah, everything works cross-functionally. You can also open this in any other magic tool, right? So if you really like this image, for example, you can upscale, you can go to image variation, backdrop remix, which I'm going to show you here in a second, infinite image. You can get to all the other tools just directly from the tool, and all of those are cross-functional as well.
Great. I am also cognizant of time. So if anybody has any questions, please make sure you drop them in the chat, and we'll leave the last 2 minutes for that. And Ian, yes, continue on.
I'm going to breeze through this last one super fast.
Perfect.
We have a tool called text to 3D texture, where essentially you just put in what you want and it will kick you out a texture, normal, displacement, and roughness map. So if you guys are doing anything in 3D space, this is a really amazing way to get really customized textures so that you can drop it into Cinema 4D, Unreal Engine, Blender, whatever you're working with. Backdrop remix, which you upload a photo and then it will automatically detect the subject, and then you type in what you want that subject to be doing, right? So in this case, it was just like a little stack of hand cream that I took in my office, and I did a beautiful sandy beach, and it will automatically add in shadows. It will add in like appropriate lighting, and it will replace the background with AI generated content, even though the subject itself is an actual photograph, which is really great. And last but not least, we have the custom generator. You can train your own custom AI models to work with art styles or photos that are uniquely yours. And so for this example, I trained a custom model on my own artwork. I am not an artist, so please do not judge me, but I just sketched some stuff in Procreate on my iPad, and this was my goofy art. I fed all these images to an AI model, and now I'm able to prompt this model to create art in my own art style. And so we're using the vase of flowers as the example for this demo, but yeah, like it's kicking me back art in my own art style. So if you have storyboard artists or anybody who's a better artist than me, I am not, this is going to be a really, really amazing tool for you to leverage so that you can create anything and everything in the style of your own artwork, which is really amazing. And while this finishes the last couple percentage here, let's open it up for a Q&A since we only have 5 minutes left.
I don't know if actually we have any more questions. I don't know if Lee and Anisha, if you had any. I had a few, a little bit more on the technical side of things.
Sure.
I was wondering about that portion of the frame rate that you were talking about. Like, is that a useful tool if you're trying to match footage? So if you're getting footage from multiple different cameras and one quality is not as good as the other, could that be something for an editor to lean into that portion of it? I just wasn't sure, because the way you were describing it, I wasn't sure if that's how you would use it.
Yeah, I mean, we have people using it now. For example, like if you get footage back that's like choppy or in a lower frame rate, you can smooth it out and you get more temporal consistency between all the footage. Right now, here's our Wes Anderson Porsche. Right now, we don't actually have a way to like control it one-to-one. Like you can't adopt it to a new frame rate. You can just slow it down, export it, and then speed it back up to real time again. And then you're going to get that really nice temporal consistency across all the frames. We have people using it for stop motion, right? Where they're able to turn their like 12 FPS stop motion into 30 FPS fluid, like looking footage, and they don't have to do any extra work on the back end. So I think it just depends on what you want to use it for. That tool also exists in the form of frame interpolation, where you can actually interpolate between images. Let me just drop two images here, a few images here, so you can see what I'm talking about. And we'll do 3.5 seconds, click generate. And what that's going to do now is it's going to morph between all the images. So what's the technology behind smooth slow motion is the technology behind this tool as well. And so it's like, this is essentially how it works, is it will blend all the frames together.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So if that's a use case that you would want to use it for, I would urge you also, like, if there's a very specific problem that you need to overcome, let's talk about building you a solution. Because we are a full stack AI research company, we own all of our own technology and we can implement it into the platform faster than literally anybody else on the planet. So if you guys are like, hey, I want to do XYZ things, can you build me a tool for that? The answer is absolutely yes. Like, let's talk about it. Let's get you something that will work for something that you're constantly, hitting your head against a wall trying to solve. We do that for a lot of our clients.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We did have a question about the green screen tool.
Mhm.
The question is if you can change the lighting source against the layers.
Like when you use, so green screen works based on the original source video. And so there's no relighting component in the green screen footage. It's just whatever lighting you have in the scene that you would use. But from there, after you do the rotoscope, you could pull in like a digital light in something like After Effects and do like a relighting or something like that. Or if you're doing it in like Blender or Unreal Engine, you can change the lighting if you're using like images to planes or like 3D mesh. So there are some ways to do it, just not natively in Runway. It's just the
I was thinking the
rotoscope tool.
same thing when you were moving the skydiver, you have to put another layer on it to make that work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a lot of people that are actually using the green screen tool to do virtual productions. And so they're able to rotoscope things out, throw it into an image's planes within the Unreal Engine ecosystem. And then they're just doing like relighting and like live AR, VR environments with using our tools, like the first input point, which is pretty cool.
There was a question here about pricing that more than, if you want to come back to it, feel free, but I think just any other color you can add to how the pricing plan works would be great for the community here.
Yeah. So if you guys are going to do it based on your company, I would recommend probably going with the enterprise level. These are our pricing tiers. We have a free tier, which will give you 125 credits and $0. And you can use literally every single one of our magic tools. You can have up to 3 projects, but we cap you on the export size. So you can only export at 720p. And then from there, you go up to $12 per month, billed annually, or $15 a month, billed monthly. And then the pro tier, which is pretty much everything unlocked. You get a bunch of credits, no caps on anything. You get all the exports, PNG sequences, ProRes, all of that stuff. It's $35 per month or $28 a month, billed annually. And then for enterprise level, depending on how big the team is and what your needs are, I think that starts at $100 per month per seat, but it gets you custom onboarding, more or less 24/7 support, those custom solutions that we talked about. Hey, I need to build a backend pipe between Google Drive and Runway because I need to get all my media into Runway. Can you build that for me? Yes, we can. All of that stuff, the custom solutions become a little bit more available. But for anyone on this call, you can go and sign up for free right now. Or if you wanted to use this, personally or whatever, these are the pricing tiers that we offer.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you for that. I think that concludes our question and answer. Ian and Will, was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we allow everybody to drop off?
I don't think so. Thank you for listening to me ramble for
Yeah.
for 45 minutes. I appreciate it.
This 45 minutes
could've
really
been-
flew. There's so many
Yeah.
interesting things in this tool. I'm so excited, and I believe the community is as well. If there's any other follow-up questions that anybody on this call has, please feel free to reach out to myself or Lee or Anisha from Mofilm, and we're happy to connect you to Runway. And yeah, we're very excited to hear more about Runway in the coming months and weeks. And then also for this webinar series, we are going to continue to have these every couple of weeks. So please stay tuned on our social channels. We'll have our next one posted in probably a week or so. So tune in for that one as well. But yeah, thank you so much, Runway team, and have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.